and welcome into the What's Up Peoria podcast. I am your host, Nathaniel Washburn, back with another episode for you, coming from the Amplify studio here at our main library in lovely downtown Peoria. And we are back with the final episode in our historic preservation series that we've been doing for the month of May. And we've been celebrating and talking about historic preservation here. And I am joined in studio today by two longtime residents who have lived in Peoria and are a part of Peoria's history. And they're going to talk with me a little bit about their own journey in Peoria, their stories, and also what historic preservation means to them from the resident side of things. We've been talking a lot to employees and the historic preservation commissioners. Now we're going to look at things from the resident point of view, and I'm excited because I'm joined by Ron and Kathy Taylor, and they are in studio with me. Ron and Kathy, how are we doing today?
Good.
Good. Thanks for having us.
Of course. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. They are going to help us out here with some, like I said, some stories and talk about historic preservation. But I do have a couple of things I want to mention before we jump into the interview portion of the podcast. First off, I want to continue to thank all of the loyal listeners who tune in every single week to hear these awesome interviews that we're doing and with these fantastic guests like Ron and Kathy who joined us last week. We had Chris Hawkes on from planning, and he was fantastic. And so I just want to thank all of you for continuing to tune in. And I want to remind you that we have a brand new email that you can access, and you can communicate with the show. You can send in show ideas, or if you have questions about specific guests, please use the email. I would love to hear from you. And that is, it's What's Up Peoria, all one word, at peoriaaz.gov. Again, that's What's Up Peoria at az.gov. And of course, you can get us on Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Pandora, all of the platforms where you listen to your favorite podcasts. You will find What's Up Peoria there as well. And again, we thank you so much for tuning in. A couple of things coming up that I want to talk to everybody about. Just as a reminder, this weekend obviously is Memorial Day weekend. The city will be closed on Monday in observance of Memorial Day. And of course, we want to thank all of our wonderful veterans that live in Peoria. Thank you so much for your service. And this is a time to remember and to reflect on those men and women who gave the ultimate sacrifice for us to be able to live in the country that we do. And we thank all the veterans who live in Peoria, who live in the surrounding communities. Thank you so much for your service. And this weekend, please take time to remember those who have fallen and who made the life that we live possible on this Memorial Day weekend. Also, to remind everybody, upcoming events that we have. I think I've talked about this a few times here in the last couple of episodes, but don't forget to mark on your calendars the 4th of July, the All-American 4th of July Festival out at Peoria Sports Complex. It's going to be a great celebration. Mark that down. 4th of July, Peoria Sports Complex. You do not want to miss it. It's always a great time out there. All right, so we're going to turn our attention to the interview portion of the podcast. And as I said, I have in studio Ron and Kathy Taylor, and they've been longtime residents of Peoria. And Kathy has a special connection to the library because she has been a volunteer here for, Kathy, I think you told me 30 years. Is that right?
Yeah.
30 years. That is amazing. Well, first off, thank you. Tell everybody what exactly, because Kathy's volunteering is a little bit different than what you might see from a normal volunteer. Tell everybody what you do here in the library.
Oh, I come, I come on Tuesday mornings with my guitar, and I play the music, and we sing with the little toddlers. And we have a lot of fun. You
guys do a great job too, and I know you come and help out with those story times, and I always see you with your guitar, always having a great time down there. You've been doing that for a while. Is it just the kids? Is it what is it about that you love?
One thing I realized before COVID happened, that it gives me hope when I see these parents, the grandparents, the dad, whatever. It gives me hope. Because here are these, you can tell that they're reading to their children at home.
Yeah. And it's so important, right? The literacy is so important. So
Yes.
that's a great way to look at it. The hope, you know, they're future of Peoria, right? Those are our future Peoria residents. So unbelievable. In 30 years, you've been volunteering and playing guitar. And Ron, you had mentioned before we got on the podcast that you're obviously a musical family. You played a little bluegrass, and I think you said you were the first act at Monday Night Melodies. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that's correct. I had taken some banjo lessons, and Kathy said that looked like fun, so she started taking guitar lessons. And our daughter wanted to get into something. She was too little for a guitar, so she got a mandolin and learned it. So some real good friends here in the West Valley were
unbelievable.
very encouraging, and they'd set this thing up.
Yeah.
And they asked us to be the first act. It was only 20 minutes of music, and it took us 6 months or something to learn it all.
That's how music is, right?
But it went uphill from there. It was
I know.
a lot of fun.
I could definitely relate to that. It does. You think, oh, we got a few songs, and then you go, it takes a really long time to get synced up as a band. So very musical family, and obviously very cool that you were the first ever act. And Monday Night Melodies has been around for 30 years. I mean, it is the oldest program that we have here, and it's still going strong. And for those of you that don't know, Monday Night Melodies happens right here at the main library in our Willow Room, and it's a collection of unbelievable talent. I was in there the other day, and there was 3 or 4 gentlemen up on stage, and unbelievable. I mean, the guy's voice, it sounded like Johnny Cash. I mean, he sounded like Johnny Cash. And I've tried to sound like Johnny. It's not easy to sound like Johnny Cash. So I was super impressed. But I'm very impressed by you guys being the first ever act up there, and very musical family. Do you guys still play together?
No.
The easy answer, no.
Our daughter went on to college and then on to life, and the trio became 2.
The trio went to a duo.
Oh, yeah.
We've actually played here at the library. They have a campfire every year.
Yes, yeah.
Without fire now. It's just a little blow-up plastic.
A little hot, right?
Yeah. And our daughter teaches piano at GCC.
Oh, wow.
And she teaches kids at her house too. So she's
very musical too. So you guys are obviously a musical family, which leads me to my next question, which is, and Ron, I'll start with you. What is your journey here in Peoria? I think you'd mentioned you got here in 8th grade. So tell the audience a little bit about your background in Peoria and how you ended up here and what you've been doing.
Sure. My parents bought 5 acres out here when there was 5-acre parcels available.
Don't see that much anymore, right?
My first view of Peoria driving in was a sign that said, now entering the town of Peoria, population 1,227, I think it said.
Wow.
So,
and what year was that?
64.
Wow. Okay. So 64, you come here. Small population.
Right. And we planted a bunch of pecan trees, and that was my dad's idea for a retirement plan. And we ended up buying most of it from him back in '95. So we're still trying to make pecans into a retirement plan. But
it's still working. Yes.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
You're producing the pecans, correct?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
It was just a hobby farm. I worked for SRP for 42 years in engineering.
Excellent. So you come out here in 64, you said, and not much here, as you said, a lot of farming at that time. I know that. And what was Peoria like back then?
Well, a lot smaller.
Very calm on the whole. And, I realized much later how much the people that lived here, they came to all the games at Peoria High School.
Right.
That was the only school.
Yeah, yeah.
And we had a carnival every fall. And, I mean, the whole city came to that. And they'd come to the plays, to the musical things.
Right, yeah, all happening at the high school, right?
Yeah, that was a very important thing.
It was kind of the center of Peoria, football and activities all at the high school, correct?
Yes.
Wow, that's crazy. And Kathy, so how did you end up in Peoria? What's your story? What's your journey?
Well, I was born in 1951, and we lived on my grandfather's farm. We lived next door to him on the farm. His farm was Olive to Choya, Mountain View.
Mountain View. Okay, still though.
Sorry.
I mean, pretty big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was he farming?
Well, when I was old enough to know him, he had retired, but they always did alfalfa
Oh yeah, okay.
here.
That's
And and
that's
cotton.
great. And cotton, yeah, I know cotton was
Yeah.
a big. There's a lot of production of cotton in Peoria as well. So
Yeah.
alfalfa, cotton, and that's really what Peoria was early on. Was a lot of farming, correct?
Yes,
Yes.
it was.
Yeah. So there's still some farming, but a lot of that has gone by the wayside, obviously, with the growth and things. So as you guys look at Peoria today and knowing your history here, what do you think of the growth? How do you've seen the changes over the decades? Ron, how do you kind of take stock of all the growth that has happened?
Well, you have to wait a lot longer at intersections, and you got to be a lot more careful driving.
Very true. Well said, Ron. Very well said.
Yeah, it's very, very much grown,
Yeah.
obviously.
And from the north, definitely from the north side, when you guys were, early on, did you guys travel to the north at all? I mean, did you guys ever head up there? Did you guys ever go to the lake or take advantage of those things when early on? Yeah.
We did.
Yeah,
there was
not a whole lot.
There was a barber here in town, down right on 83rd Avenue, across from Cassars, called. It was Bob Bullard was his name.
Oh, okay. Okay.
He cut our hair, and he liked my brother. I mean, he took us fishing up
Nice. Did you guys ever catch anything?
No, sunburn, I remember.
Yeah, you get sunburned. And Kathy, how about you, Jazz? Ever make your way up north as a kid or ever go up there?
No.
No, not too much.
No, my parents didn't do that.
Mine didn't either, so that's okay.
Yeah.
They were not big lake people.
Well,
so.
other than the lake, there wasn't anything out there,
There wasn't. You're right.
It was just
Yeah.
desert.
Yeah, it was a lot of
Yeah.
orange groves too. I know I was talking with somebody back. I remember back where the Arrowhead Mall is now was all orange groves, and
Oh, yeah.
so the growth up there has been tremendous as well. So let me ask you guys then, kind of from the resident perspective, people who have a history of Peoria, who've known Peoria over the decades. And Kathy, I'll start with you on this one. What does historic preservation mean to you? When I say, "Hey, Historic Preservation Commission," really, where does your head go? What does that mean to you?
Oh, I think it's real important for people to realize the farming that was here and how important it was. And that's one thing. And if we could keep some of the buildings.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the farming and things like that,
Yeah.
and those type of things. Anything else that sticks out to you?
Well, and they have saved it, the old Peoria High School.
Yes, yeah,
That
Old
building.
Main, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
because that was a beautiful place.
It really was, and still is. They've done a
Yeah.
fantastic job of just keeping it up and making sure that history stays intact. So, Ron, how about you? When I say historic preservation, is there anything that pops into your head that, as a resident, you want to see happen?
It's an interesting question. I didn't tell you, but I was in the Historical Society here when they had
I
a
didn't
Peoria
know
Story.
that. Okay.
I was president during the time when we remodeled some of those old school buildings into museums.
Yeah.
And that was worth preserving. There's some things that some people wanted to preserve that probably shouldn't.
It's funny what that means to each person, right?
Oh yeah. I tried to understand all of it and not be against anything other than just not wanting to preserve absolutely everything. You can't
Sure.
do that because
No.
there's this thing called progress out there.
Well,
too.
and then you want to make sure that things that are important, if you preserve everything, things lose importance over
Right,
time,
exactly,
right? So as a good president should, you were open to listening to everybody.
yeah.
So how did you enjoy your time?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. I was also glad when I was through. But I'm serious. It was good.
And I know that there was a lot of work, because I've seen what the Historic Society did and the records that were kept. I've seen that, and I know that there was a lot of meticulous work that went into that as well. So do you remember the years that you were?
Yeah, it was about 2004 to 2012.
I think that's fantastic. So, in that, you're kind of coming from a perspective as a resident, but also somebody who gave back to the community. In that, is there anything historic preservation that sticks out to you? That it's a tough
the
question.
Presbyterian
Oh, yeah.
Church?
Yes.
That should stay because
Oh.
that was built before we became a state.
Yeah, 1892.
It's been there for a while,
Yeah.
for sure.
When we first moved to Peoria, I was in 8th grade. She was too. That's where we met, but we didn't. the
All right,
dating
we're coming
thing
back to
happened.
that one.
All right, it happened a lot later. than
Okay.
that, but, my family, we were Methodists, so we went to the old Methodist church, and I don't know if you know about that one.
Sure.
The building's still there. It's right on 84th Avenue and
Right across the street
Jefferson.
from.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, yes.
From
It's
the,
got the metal roof
Yep.
on it. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Now I know what you're talking about.
It was a Methodist church, and they just got too small and kind of died. So
Yeah.
we went to the Presbyterian church
Sure.
after that.
That's pretty close to Methodist, right? I mean, it's right. It's similar.
It was
I was raised Methodist as well. So
well, similar and different, but most everybody I knew in high school went there too.
Oh, okay. Well, then at least you knew people. So yeah, and that church is a big part of the history of Peoria as well. And you're right; it has been there for a very, very long time, and one that is very important as a cornerstone of the downtown area as well, for sure. So we don't want to gloss over the 8th grade thing when you guys met, because that's pretty cool. So you guys are at Peoria Elementary, and then you knew each other, but you said the dating came later.
Yeah, when I was a senior in college. So it's
Oh wow!
quite a
So
bit
much later.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
a friend of ours.
Suggested
One of the
a
cook
blind
girls.
date, a semi-blind date, because I knew she was.
I was going to say, so when you got set up, did you know? You were like, oh, I know her. Did you guys know each other throughout high school then as well?
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Very.
Yeah.
And so kind of goes full circle, comes back around.
I guess it just took somebody else to put the suggestion in our minds.
Sometimes that happens, you know. You need somebody to put it in your mind that, you know, that sounds like a really, really good idea. So obviously, again, you guys married, you raise a family here in Peoria, which is fantastic. Looking at that and kind of thinking in those terms of the future, because if you think back to when you guys were first married and you're living here and you're raising a family, let's fast forward 30 years, right? What do you want to see from the city from a historic preservation point of view as we look to the future, and we say 30 years from now, what do we want people to be able to remember Peoria for, or how we remember Peoria?
The gin, we had gins here, and the gin that was by our house is still here.
Really? I didn't know that. Okay.
It's on 81st south of Peoria Avenue, and it's kind of a yellowish, they've painted it, and it's kind of a yellowish color. And that was.
And didn't know that. Wow.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Well, I lived on 81st Avenue. When we were 9, we moved into town, which was kind of silly, but we're on 81st and Lincoln Street, and it's just a very short street, only about a quarter mile. But to the west of our house, there was the gin yard where they would put the bales of cotton until the train came and picked it up. I actually have a picture of it.
Oh, wow.
I'll show it to you.
Yeah, definitely. So, and again, I think that goes, going back to what are those, in 30 years, what do we want people to know? And you're saying, hey, this is part of the process that made Peoria.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think one thing, she touched on it with the farming, that's extremely important in this valley and absolutely misunderstood and not taken into account hardly at all is water.
Yes. Right.
Most people just turn on the faucet and there's water. I worked for the Salt River Project for 42 years, not in the water side, but I've been irrigating now for 29 years. That's where we are now.
Yeah.
We don't experience water shortages like some places in the country.
Very true.
There are places like in North Carolina where it rains all the time, but if it quits for 5 minutes, they're in a drought because they don't have any storage of anything. And this valley and the farms that became Peoria would not have existed if they had not built Roosevelt Dam and all the other dams and then brought water to the valley that was regular. Before it was when it rained, you got a lot of it, and when it didn't, you got nothing, and so it wasn't real good. I think a lot of people don't understand that.
I think you're right.
And they don't understand even the water laws and the water rules and how the water belongs to the land. It doesn't belong to any people. Mm-hmm. And when a subdivision comes in and buys farmland, that water right is still with the land, and the subdivision can get it from SRP in the canal and run it through their filtration plants and provide water.
Interesting.
Okay?
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's kind of the way it works.
I didn't know that.
A lot more to it than that. But I think when we fly over here and see golf courses and swimming pools and lakes and things, this is still the Sonoran Desert.
Right. It is. Yeah.
If we didn't have that, we'd be living in cactus fields.
We definitely would be, and I think that's a very good point when you're looking 30 years down the road. And that's the question I asked you, and you're saying, hey, it's to think about those type of things, to think about what goes into making that possible. That in 30 years, Peoria will still be here because of that ability to conserve the water and to be good stewards of the water. And that is a great point. And I'm not always thinking it from the viewpoint of 30 years from now, are we going to be able to say Peoria's, Peoria? Yeah, we are, because of the water, because of those things. So maybe historic preservation is a bigger scope than just, oral histories and pictures and stories and those type of things. That maybe it's a bigger scope than what I thought it was. So it's an interesting take on it.
Let them tell you how we got the water, how we got the dams.
Yeah, especially Roosevelt. It was considered, it was the first reclamation project under Teddy Roosevelt's signature, right? But the government didn't just build it and give it to us and let everybody pay for it. They loaned the money to the farmers to build that thing. The farmers put all their land up as collateral for the loan, and then they paid the loan off.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so because of that, the way their board is governed, we vote for things. We vote by 1 acre, 1 vote, not one person, one vote.
Oh, okay.
So
interesting.
Literally,
so the more acres you have,
the more votes you have.
The more pull you have.
And some people see problems with that, but it always made the water available.
Yeah.
It always has. It always will, as long as somebody doesn't mess with things.
Yeah, and you guys are right in that with what you do with your pecans, right? I mean, you guys are still doing that, and you've been doing that for. I mean, you said your father.
Well, yeah, I grew up out there doing it, and then we bought it from them, and we're still doing it.
So
we still do it.
That's unbelievable. So you are, and I mean, you are is part of Peoria. You are part of that farming community and have been for decades and decades. And I appreciate you walking me through it. I didn't know any of that about the farming, and so there is still an element of farming that goes on in Peoria that I think people need to know about. And to me, that is one of the important histories that we talk about in preservation. But I love that you brought up water in a different way and kind of make us see it in a different light. That is also part of the historic preservation, if you will. It's actually, we want to preserve, but it is part of the history of Peoria as well.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, this has been great. I love the stories. It's always fun every time I sit in here and I learn and I hear these stories. 25 minutes flies by. It does, and it's just been a real treat to be able to hear both of your journeys here in Peoria and the story of how you guys, came together and knew each other, and then everything comes full circle and you end up getting married and raising a family, and what an unbelievable story. And again, thank you for what you've done for Peoria and what you're still doing for Peoria and being a part of the fabric of the community and giving back. And Kathy, as long as you're able to and want to, we want you here at the library helping out, because every time you come in, I know the kids love it. I know our librarians love it. I love it because it's a really cool and unique aspect of story times that you don't get in other libraries. And I've been to a lot of them, and their story times are great, but it's very cool to just have a different aspect when somebody comes in and they bring their guitar. It's a lot of fun. So keep that going, and we really do appreciate it. So, and I want to thank both of you again for coming in and sharing your time with me and sharing the stories. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Dave.
You're welcome.
Okay. Pleasure. All right. Well, again, thanks to all the listeners out there for tuning in. We are moving into June. I cannot believe we are moving into June. May flew by, as it always does. We have summer reading that is kicking off here next week, so there's going to be a lot going on at the library. But as far as the podcast goes, next couple of weeks, we're going to be doing a whole safety 2-part series. And I'm going to be having the police chief and the fire chief joining me over the next 2 weeks. So I'm really, really excited about that. Make sure that you tune in for those episodes coming up in June. I want to thank everybody for helping me out with Historic Preservation Month. It has been a lot of fun, and I've really enjoyed doing this series. As always, make sure you're getting out to all the awesome events that we're doing in Peoria, and summer reading in full effect starting next week. So if you haven't registered registered, make sure you get to Sunrise Mountain or Peoria, Maine, and make sure that you're registering for our summer reading program. All right, so until next time, this is What's Up Peoria.